something really important, we think, is happening in Scotland. And what we think is happening in Scotland is that there's a great raised awareness of the needs of young people. There's a real recognition that what happens is that lots of young people whose attainment we're challenged with raising have got barriers to learning. And these barriers come from their circumstances and their backgrounds and the experiences that they've had. And no one is going to make a difference for these children unless we do. And that's the reality of it. I'll do some stuff this afternoon before we finish off, and I'll make very clear that in my view, change isn't going to come from the politicians. And if we wait for that, we'll wait forever. All they can do is give us permission. We can't change the resourcing, so we can't get more psychologists, more CAMS staff. We need to create a culture of kindness. We need to create a culture of care. We need to create a culture of ambition, which sits alongside that culture of care, that gives young people the warmth, the love, the support and affection that they need, and allies that with a resolute demand that they get all that they can possibly get from the experience that they have with us. That's not what change looks like, people. That's what difference looks like. We're not here today to talk about change. We're here to talk about difference. And we're not here to talk about it. We're here to start doing it. And there is no better way, I don't think, to start doing it than by introducing to you Dr. Suzanne Zeedyk. Suzanne's been absolutely instrumental in the spread of the Resilience film. If any of you haven't seen it, try and get the opportunity to see it soon, which has raised awareness of adverse childhood experiences in a way that nothing else has done up until now. And Suzanne has campaigned relentlessly behind that to raise awareness. And in my usual style, I've kind of limped onto her coattails, and I've got some work out of it too. And I think that's a really good thing. Because as much as it's important to benefit the children, I need to make a living too. Are we clear about that, guys? Okay? You know, I mean, it's not all about altruism. Okay? So Suzanne Zeedyk, and she's going to be ably supported. We're not going to show the film this morning. We're going to give you ACES, the live experience. And the people that we've got to do that, first of all, we've got Jazz Ampofar, who's sitting over there. If you haven't seen Jazz Ampofar, that's her sister. If you haven't seen Jazz Ampofar, she's like this British opera. That's not opera. That's O-P-R-A-H. That's what she's like. She is a force of nature. She is the power of love. She is the absolute evidence that if you can find resilience, then you can change and you can be different. And we've also got Chris Kilkenny, who's an outstanding speaker and practitioner. I taught him absolutely everything he knows. But despite that, he's managed to make a living for himself. And what Chris will do is something different, because Chris is a force of nature as well. But he talks about the ordinary banality of disadvantage. He talks about the childhood experiences which are often invisible in their impact. And he talks about the need that we have to change both of these. So we'll have drama, we'll have pathos, there will be tears. I warn you about that. Don't start now. Wait, till an appropriate moment. There will be tears, there will be emotion, you will be moved. But also what we'll have alongside that is we'll have the science, we'll have the research, we'll have the academic background to it. And can I just say, before I bring Suzanne on to start this session, this is amazing. When I came up with the idea of doing something, I never thought I'd finish up handing out the sorting programmes. That's the first thing. I didn't think I'd finish handing out the sorting badges either. I didn't think I'd have to do any work. I thought I'd just do my usual swan about, talk a bit of crap, play you some tunes, show you some dancing letters, and then sod off, because that's what I normally do. I've had to work really hard. I never believed we'd have over 200 people in this hall. And before you do anything else, what I want you to do is, I want you to put your hands together for yourselves, because it's Saturday morning, and you're here for the day, and you've paid for the privilege. This is astonishing. Ladies and gentlemen, applaud yourselves in the Portobello Learning Festival. Never heed waving to people, right? And I'm just off to get some therapy now. Is that okay? But you're going to welcome Dr. Suzanne Zeedyk.
I don't really know how to follow that. Please laugh at that louder. I need help. What do we need to do to create a more connected society? How do we pull in the people we wouldn't normally think of as doing that? And right now we can think about the architects of a room, which help to facilitate hearing what other people have to say without really thinking about what they're doing as connection. For me, that underlies a lot of what we're talking about today, which we called, when David dreamed it up, adverse childhood experiences, the science, the reality, and the responses. And then we put out this kind of imagery, which is now on the front of that program. And all of you came. I second what David has to say. Something amazing is going on in Scotland. Across the whole of the country, across the whole of the UK, people are interested in adverse childhood experiences. All 4 areas of the UK, the governments have got on board. And our policymakers are coming up with ideas about how to meet our growing understanding of the impact of childhood trauma. But it is only in Scotland that we have a grassroots movement going on. And that's why you are here. You are here because of a grassroots interest, not simply because of government policy. Now, I think the government policy is really important. But if we need culture change, which is really about what growing kindness is about, governments cannot create kindness, but we can. So, how do we help to bring that about? David said this in an email recently when someone said, okay, what's the aim of the day? And David wrote in an email, my aim? I want the delegates thinking. Lots of children have had experiences that make being part of school difficult. I want them to see why they struggle to learn and why so many have difficulty having any success in life at all. And then I want them to leave saying to themselves, I can do something about this. I have learned things today that make it more likely that I will act. That's our remit for the day. That's the punchline at the end of the day. That's the program we've tried to put together for you, is to help you to know what you do about the fact that children are in pain in our country, and they grow into adults who retain that pain if they don't have people to help them resolve it. So, in my 20 minutes, what did I think I might do? I thought I might do 4 things. I thought I might talk about the science, and then I will talk about the why, and then the what next, and then the what first. Does that sound like a weird trajectory of topics? Good, I meant it to be weird. Okay, if we talk about the science. This diagram captures at the heart of what has empowered so many people across Scotland is this scientific model. Scientific models don't usually energize a population. But that's the model that the scientists who began to understand adverse childhood experiences came up with. So I want to begin this morning by making sure that you feel confident about that model and that you understand the key insights that that scientific study revealed. Because you'll see at the top of my slide, it was done in 1998. 1998 was a generation ago. We've had 20 years that we've known this stuff, but we haven't put it fully into practice. Now, my public health colleagues tell me that that's pretty common for public health, about 20 years. And I think that's 20 years of children's pain. If ACEs help us to think in deeper ways about what we can do to help, I don't want it to be 21. So here's what they found 20 years ago. And I'm shortening that study to the key insights. Working with 17,000 people across an area of America, so they were representative of American society in general, and then we can ask, okay, does that make them representative of Scotland? or of the UK, what they found was that if you had childhood stress, particularly these areas of stress, but that's just a starter for 10, you were more likely to have adult health outcomes like these. So let me go backwards. If you experienced abuse, sexual, emotional, or physical, if you experienced neglect, emotional or physical, or if you experienced what they called household dysfunction, your mother was treated violently, there was substance misuse in your family, you had a parent with mental illness, you had a parent in prison, or your parents were divorced, which is now pretty normative for our society, it led to outcomes like this in adulthood. It made it more likely that you would have liver disease, heart disease, adolescent pregnancy. You'd be involved in a violent relationship. You were more likely to drink, to smoke, to use drugs. Effectively, your health suffers the more stress you have in childhood. Or at least it's more likely to. And if we get that, if we truly come to understand that childhood fear leaves an impact on adult health, we can also begin to ask, what happens for those adults who don't seem to suffer as much? What was the factor that built resilience in them? My favorite one that is not on this slide, because I can't fit all of the outcomes on a slide and have you read the font, is diabetes. I think in our society today, people go, diabetes, what does type 2 diabetes have to do with childhood stress? And yet that's what their findings show. Scotland has really high rates of type 2 diabetes. It gives us a whole new way of understanding all sorts of health and health challenges if we think back to what was happening in terms of fear in a child's life. That's an intriguing question. Because here's the other key outcome from that study. If you take those 10 experiences and turn them into a score, which is what the public health officials and the doctors which underpinned this study tried to do, if you give yourself a score, how many experiences did you have as a child? The number of people in that sample that said they had had none of those experiences was roughly a third. The number who said they'd had one was a quarter. The number of people who said they'd had 2 was 16%, 3 was 10%, and the number of people who said they'd had 4 or more was 16%. I remember one of the presentations I was giving about these and showed this slide to a school in the Borders. And we were lined up very much like this. And there was a teacher sitting right down here in the front. And when I put up that slide, I heard her gasp. And me being me, I sort of went, that's a lovely reaction. What does that mean? And she said, 16%. That's 3 of the children in my classroom who have had 4 or more of those. Which 3 are they? Can you feel what's happening in this room? Can you feel that silence descending from the ceiling? Thank you. Because it means that you are willing to really think about what it's like to have 4 or more of those. Sometimes when we deal with evidence, people often show us numbers or graphs. And we do things in the head. And I think the key thing to really getting ACEs and making the changes that all of you have come for is to feel what it's like to have 4 or more of those. And the reason they stop at 4, not stop, but they emphasize 4, is because once you've got a score of 4 or more, you're boosted into a whole new risk category. And the next risk category is 6 or more of those. What's your life like if by the time you're in primary school, you've had 6 or more of those? I remember talking to a foster carer who was talking about the 2-year-old that she had in her care for in a nursery, and her 2-year-old already had a score of 5. It's hard to hear this stuff. So if you are willing and able to find ways to think about what it's like to experience 4 or more of those, you serve our children and you serve our country. Because I think it's feeling it that we need to get in order to know what to do next. So, when you put all of that together, you might be thinking, okay, those are the American statistics. Are those the statistics here in the UK? Well, one of the ways that we know what the stats are is because Wales has been doing quite a lot of government-led work, and they've done a survey recently, an ACEs survey, of a representative sample in their population. And here's some of the infographics that they've come up with. So if you want to know that, you can Google Wales, ACEs, and come up with a number of their infographics. And here at the bottom, if I blow this up, shows what they came up with. 53% of their sample said they'd had no ACEs, all the way up to the number who said they'd had 4 or more was 14%. That's no different than those American figures 20 years ago. So this helps us to think about the international transferability of that first study. And there have been lots of studies since, but you guys said you only wanted to stay till 4:30 today. You don't want to stay till 9 o'clock, and I could have gone through all the rest of the studies that have been done in those 20 years. It's just that this one has really gotten people's attention and has pushed things. But in other words, we've learned a lot in the last 20 years that build on these kinds of figures. But here's the conclusion that the scientists came to that helps us to understand what they think is going on. This is their model. If you have adverse childhood experiences, if you experience suffering and pain and loss and grief and fear that nobody is available to help you with, it turns toxic. And then that leads to disrupted neurodevelopment. It changes your body. It changes the way your brain develops. It literally changes you biologically. So that leads to social, emotional, and cognitive impairments. You can't pay attention in the same way. You can't think in the same way. You can't look at faces to make friendships. You can't trust other people when they try to help. So that leads to the adoption of health risk behaviors. You're more likely to take up drinking, smoking. You punch people more easily. Because your self-regulatory system, your biology, needs help. It's more fragile. So that leads to disease, disability, and social problems. We have more people in prison. We have more people in foster care. We have more people who aren't able to complete their schooling. We have more people who end up divorced because relationships are hard for them. And that leads to early death. In some areas of Glasgow, the average rate of death is 54 years old. 54. How many of you in this audience are older than 54? You could be dead. And if we can laugh about it, we can think these hard things in more depth. We need the laughter to get us to the deeper thinking. Our Chief Medical Officer, Harry Burns, used to talk a lot about adverse childhood experiences, and he used to say, we will not solve that problem by more anti-obesity drives or more exercise drives, not even a daily mile will solve that problem. What we need to think about is how we love our children. Okay. The resource, the tool, the phenomenon that has pushed Scotland, led Scotland, seduced Scotland into this grassroots movement is that film, Resilience. Made by James Redford. He didn't have to make it. He got frustrated. He knew there was this study that enough people weren't talking about. He decided that his talent was making films, and so he made this film called Resilience. And last year, right around, in fact, this time last year, Tina Hendry and our small teams were running around Scotland to all sorts of communities screening this film. That's the tour poster. We didn't know it was going to turn into that. You'll see that there's 25 communities, almost all of them sold out, When we brought this film to Scotland, we just scheduled one screening because we wanted to be sure Scotland got to see it along with other areas of England, which is the only place it was playing then. And it had just exploded. And because so many people got frustrated that they couldn't get into screenings, it drove the interest. Until we said, we can't do anymore, we're exhausted. So other people took up the mantle and said, we'll get the film. And that film now appears everywhere. There are screenings in so many places. People decided to buy the license themselves. People went back from those screenings and told their local authority they needed to purchase it, that they needed to show it in their schools. People purchased it out of their own pocket in order to have people understand the impact of ACEs. We had expected that first tour would kick that off, but my best guess is something like 30,000 people have now seen that film. Originally, I was very naive. I thought, I'll just get people to write to me and tell me when they have a screening and how many saw it, and we'll keep track of it. I don't know how to keep track, okay? But here's something interesting given today. We put together a summary of who came to that first initial tour. And if you want to read it, you can download the report that we put together. And one of the things we analyzed was who came. Here's who came. This shows a breakdown of who came. Half the people who chose to come to those first screenings were in education. Education is driving this in a way in Scotland. It's not health. It's education. So I hope you feel very proud of yourselves and very hopeful and very determined, because schools across our country have great potential to make change. If you're not having things great at home, the next place that most children will experience kindness and care and safety is schools, unless they don't. Because there are still a number of schools across the country who don't quite get this yet, who don't quite know what it means in action. And if the number of teachers and education staff in this audience can help them to feel brave about what they might do, then we will continue to make the change that this movement is driving. And a number of you in this audience are also not from schools. If you can find ways to support your local school, that helps to drive forward the confidence within education. So, since some of you will not have seen this film, I'm going to take 2 minutes to show you the trailer from the film so that you get a sense of how a film is changing a nation. You wouldn't have thought that an hour's film could have had the impact that we're having here in Scotland.
We all like to think of childhood as this time of joy and innocence. But, for many of us, it's just not true.
When you grow up in these type of situations, it's not something you talk about. I know I didn't.
The first thing that we found is that adverse childhood experiences are common.
Kids are young, they don't know what's going on, they won't remember anyway. Well, the child may not remember, but the body remembers.
There was this incredible gee whiz effect. You mean adverse childhood experiences cause heart disease and lung disease and liver and cancer?
Exposure to trauma affects children's developing brains. The impact is on your behavior, it's on your heart, it's on your DNA. Like, how do you deal with all that?
I don't reach out because I'm not used to that.
We have a whole new body of knowledge now that could open up what we have up till now been seen as intractable, unsolvable problems.
No child should be punched or kicked. No child should be punched or kicked.
If you can get the science into the hands of the general population, they will invent very wise actions.
Do you feel like any of the interventions have been making a difference?
They made all the difference in the world.
It's there, it's possible, and a defeatist attitude is completely disconnected from what 21st century science is telling us. And we should be going after that like a bear.
think that a film should be having such a dramatic impact on a whole culture. It's only a resource, it's only a tool, but it's turned out to be very effective. And enough people get in an hour that this is a real issue. So let me come to the why. Because ACES is not a new initiative. It's not a new idea that the government's going to write up with a plan. I mean, the government will have some plans, but it's not a new initiative. It's the why that underpins all the other stuff that we're doing. Okay? Here's what ACES and ACES framework tells us. It tells us that stress affects your brain. In my language, if you spend lots of time looking out for saber-toothed tigers, and your world is full of fear and stress, and saber-toothed tigers lurking in the edge of your world, then it makes it harder for you to comfort yourself. It makes it harder for you to find your internal teddy bear. ACEs affects brains, and it affects bodies. So within our bodies, within the self-regulatory system in our bodies, you have what the medics call the sympathetic and the parasympathetic division. But who can remember that language? I think of it as the saber-toothed tiger system and the teddy bear system. Too many of us these days spend most of our time, or an awful lot of our time, in the saber-toothed tiger system. We need to find ways to get back into the teddy bear system. And children who have experienced trauma and pain spend a lot more time in their saber-toothed tiger systems. And we can make it worse. As schools, as settings, if we can understand how to help children to get back into their teddy bear system, into their calm, into their safety, into breathing more slowly, then that helps their self-regulatory system. If you carry only one word out of here from me, that's my vote. All of us are dealing with our self-regulatory system every minute of the day, but we live in a culture that doesn't help us to understand that. In other words, trauma and stress affect our very biology. I think that is the key message that the ACE study gives us, and I think it's like a light bulb, revolutionary, the world is not flat moment for many people. Okay, if you want to know more about that language, I'm one of the stalls out there. So I wrote a book called Saber-Toothed Tigers and Teddy Bears, which doesn't sound very science-y. Doesn't sound like the sort of thing a research scientist would write. But I use that language because I think it helps people to get it. We've got free handouts. Take as many as you like. Hand them to the woman at the bus on your way home. Because the question becomes, how do we help others to know this? And I'll just flag one other thing. This is a big conference some of us are having in September. Nadine Burke-Harris, who is at the center of that film, is coming as our international guest speaker. And my partners on that event are Tigers. Some of the Tigers team are here. Will you wave your hands, guys? Can everybody look back there? Okay? This is the Tigers team. They do apprenticeships for young people, many of whom didn't have a very good time in school. So they're looking for other ways to find success in life. Tigers are just a business in the country. They didn't have to get on board the ACES train, but ACES has changed the way that they deliver apprenticeships. They decided that they wanted to risk having a big conference. We rented the SECC. Do you know how expensive that is? And the only thing we had to back us was the confidence that enough people would buy tickets for that too. This grassroots movement is funding itself through people willing to buy tickets like to today. Okay? There are flyers somewhere around that will tell you about that. I'm just trying to give you a flavor of where you can get more information. Because here's the really challenging stuff that I want to offer us. Are you ready? It's only 10 past 10. Here's the controversial stuff. If we really understand ACEs, and we really get it, we will come to understand that the Scottish Attainment Challenge will fail if it's not trauma-informed. Or that's what I think. You are perfectly at liberty to disagree with me. And I hope I'm wrong. But I don't think I am, or I wouldn't have put it on a PowerPoint slide. What if I'm right? What if all this effort that is going into boosting numeracy and literacy, if we don't make it trauma-informed so that people understand how the biology underpinning learning blocks the ability to learn, we'll have wasted all your effort. All those forms that you're filling out in schools, it'll be wasted if we don't get the approach right. Let me make it worse. You know how we're expanding early years in childcare? We're going to damage our children if what we deliver is an attachment-led. And the word attachment rarely appears in any of the documents that the government is coming up with. And let me give you one more image. Do you know that image? Getting it right for every child. Well, do you know what ACEs tell us? We can't be getting it right for every child if we don't understand more about how to see the fears that they carry. This is not easy, because if you're a teacher in charge of 30 children, how are you going to address every single one's needs? I don't know, but that's the question that we need to ask ourselves. That's the conversation we need to have, because otherwise we are asking teachers to do something impossible, and we are kidding on that they can do it. And it's better not to live in denial. So, here's an example of how I think we are not yet getting it. People write to me all the time now and tell me stories about what's happening in their settings, and I ask them, can I use them if I keep it anonymous? So here's a story I got yesterday. I've been criticized today for cuddling a child who was crying because he didn't want to put on his covering shirt when one of the other staff told him that he needed to before going outside. I cuddled him, and I talked to him about his shirt, and then I gave him a choice between that shirt and another one. And he chose one, and he happily walked outside. Yes! Success. Except that that member of staff, who clearly knows about ACEs and knows about the power of cuddling, I walked outside a few minutes later to find my colleagues saying to each other it wasn't right that I was cuddling him when he needed to put his shirt on, that I was giving him mixed messages by cuddling him when he needed to do as he was told by an adult. This is the culture change we are talking about. This is what it means to shift from an adult-led society to a child-led society. That we can come to see children's crying not as resistance, but as a need for help. This is the culture change that Carol Craig talks about in her new book. I talk about this book all the time because I think it's a fabulous book. She's published this book a few months ago called Hiding in Plain Sight, and she says in this book that we raise our children harshly. We don't intend to. It's simply the cultural norm that we got handed in Scotland, but that we are doing harsher things than we realize, and that if ACEs is to be effective, it will bring about culture change, so that we can see and respond to children's pain in new ways. And here's an example. David said to me, you go on about this belting stuff a lot these days. And I do, because I think it's a good example of what was once normative, what schools once did. And I have to believe that most people did it not believing that it was causing harm over the long term. This is an article just from March talking about belting. Here's an image from it. Corporal punishment used to be popular. Now it's argued that the experience condemned pupils to poor health in later life. What that title means is that once upon a time, not that long ago, our school system created ACEs without meaning to. If we could do it up to 1987, we can do it today without meaning to. If we are brave enough to get curious about where we are creating more stresses, then we can take those stresses away. And just for those of you who've come up from England and might be thinking that's a whole lot of Scottish context, well, here's a reminder. This is a school in Britain which gets a lot of attention as the strictest school in Britain. And here's a piece from that article last month, 2 months ago. The school's 484 pupils study in an atmosphere of rigid austerity. Demerits are given out for the slightest errors, forgetting a pen, slouching, turning to look out of a window during a lesson. A number of you have squitchy looks on your faces at the moment. Good, because this is the antithesis of what ACEs tell us children are needing. We are in the middle of a debate. And it's worth understanding we're in the middle of a debate and that we are not just naturally moving toward progress, because finish that article, The quality of education at this school was recognized as outstanding in a report by Ofsted. We are in the middle of a debate. And David Cameron recently tried to capture that debate in one of his new blogs. You'll see he called it a zombie debate, the behavior debate. We are in the middle of a debate about what do schools need to give to children and how do we read behavior. So as I wind up, let me just touch on how some schools are responding, okay? Once you get it, you think, okay, what next? What do I do? Okay, here are 5 ways in which schools in Scotland are responding. This is Patuka East Primary School near Glenrothes, and they adopted simply new language. All they did was change their language from challenging behavior to distressed behavior. That's all they did. They did that for free. And they tell a story of how it transformed their schools simply by one word. Because when you say distress, it helps the teachers, it supports the teachers to remember when they are overwhelmed that a child is not trying to give them a hard time, that a child is struggling, that they are in distress. Here's another one. This is Churnside Primary in Glasgow. See the woman in the middle of that picture? That's Jackie McIver. I think Jackie McIver is here today, aren't you, Jackie? Would you wave to people? Hiya, Jackie. Jackie's doing a workshop today, and she can tell you the story of how they introduced mindfulness. The guy on the end, can you just see the orange robes? They've got a monk in orange robes wandering around their school, and they paid for him with PEF money. See the woman on the other side of me? She's an aromatherapist. They paid for an aromatherapist with PEF money. That took courage. Jackie can tell you about the kind of courage it took to decide to do that. Here's another one. This is Banesford Primary in Falkirk. Do you know what they did? They got rid of the behavior charts. Where's Susan? Susan, wave higher. Susan can tell you about what it was like to get rid of behavior charts. That scares teachers when you get rid of behavior charts because they don't know what else to depend on. This is Falkirk High School in Falkirk, surprisingly. In Falkirk High School, they decided to change the way that they welcomed students into the classroom. They simply changed their greetings. And I was there a week ago for the year end of their projects, and they talk about the way in which it's having massive changes to simply change the way in which they welcome students into the classroom. So do you know what that means? Another way to describe what they did is they enriched the kindness in their corridors. Enriching kindness is a strategy for attainment. And they offer them within that. This is their head teacher. There are a lot of head teachers and senior management in this crowd today. So this picture is especially for you. That's a head teacher who wasn't sure this was going to work. That's a head teacher who chose to be courageous. If the Daily Mail got hold of the news that they were tackling attainment by changing the greetings to their classrooms, they weren't sure it was going to work, but they didn't know what else to try. So their desperation led them to be more courageous. And here's one more set. Here's one more courageous act. This is a quip of 4 schools in West Lothian, and they developed teddy bear policies. They've given GERFAC a new name, teddy bear policies. They use their PEF money to buy those kind of teddy bears for every single one of their classrooms. And they talked their local authority into the idea that this was a good idea. Those are those head teachers. Here are 4 brave head teachers who weren't sure this was going to work either. I think these are images of courage. I think their message to you would be brave. So today's ideas across all the workshops and the other keynotes are to help you to find ways to be brave where you are. Because look, here's one more image. This is the point of the ACES movement. Kids need help. This drawing was done by Mrs. Jeffries at Canal View Primary in Primary 1. She's putting lots of these out on Twitter. Children need an umbrella. Because that then brings us to the what first. Once we get it, we can act on it. But first, we need to think about what that means. If we're going to get it right for every child, first, we need to get it. And I'm not always sure we're getting it. So, here are the two people who I cannot think of as better to help us get it. We're now going to hear from Jazan Pofar and from Chris Kilkenny, who are going to tell us stories to help us to see what we might miss in classrooms. Jazz is a wonderful story of drama, which we often think is trauma. These stories about drama. Jazz will help us to understand drama, and Chris will help us to understand the other side of it. That very often, it's very quiet and banal. If we can hear those stories and take them on board, then we can really meet the needs of all our young people. Thank you very much.